In this video, I want to introduce the idea of WordPress page builders. When WordPress version 5 was released, WordPress integrated its own page builder called Gutenberg that's had a lot of mixed press. We will have a look at Gutenberg in a later video. But first, what exactly is a page builder and how is it different from what we had before? Before I answer that, I just want to explain this image. It's a typical web page that has a header, a sidebar, a footer, and the main page content. Page builders, or even the classic editor that we used to use with WordPress, only build the content for that page content area. The header, the sidebar, and the footer are controlled by the theme. Some themes have some flexibility, so for example, the Astra theme will allow you to remove the header from a page if you want to. You'll also typically be able to have a left sidebar instead of a right one, or a left sidebar and a right sidebar, but these are controlled by the theme. The page builder only controls the content in that page content rectangle you can see on the screen. There is a slight blurring of this image when you look at some plugins like Elementor Pro and Divi, and I think probably Beaver Builder. These are all page builders, but they also have elements of theme design built in as well. But for this video, I want to focus on the page builder. And I asked a question a moment ago, what is a page builder and how is it different from what we had before? Well, let's have a look at what we had before. I'm here in the WordPress dashboard, and if I was to go over and add a new post to this, we're going to see the Gutenberg editor, and the Gutenberg editor is all about building with blocks. I'll show you that shortly. But I have a plugin installed, it's not activated, called Classic Editor. If I activate that plugin, then let's go back, and I'm going to go back and click on Add New again. You'll see that we've got a different editor entirely. This is the old classic editor, and it's a what you see is what you get editor of sorts, very similar to what you would find in a word processor. You typically just write your post, your content in here. You can insert images using the Add Media button. You can format, align, bullet points, bold italics, text colors, and so on. If you're using the Classic Editor plugin, and you might decide you want to use Gutenberg on some posts but not others, if you go to the settings, writing, and scroll down a little bit, you'll see here default editor to use for all users. You can specify either the classic or the block editor, which is Gutenberg, and then allow users to switch editors. Click on yes if you want people to be able to switch between the two. Let's just click on save changes, and now if I go over to the all posts, you can see that it will tell me which editor was used to create a page. So this one was using the block editor, and I could edit in the block editor. And if I click on that link, it will take me to the block editor, but I could choose to edit in the classic editor. Similarly, this one was edited with the classic editor. If I click the link, it would take me to the classic editor, but I could also edit in the block editor. But this video is about the page builders, not about the classic editor. So let's go in. I'm going to deactivate the classic editor. And note that when you deactivate the classic editor, you do lose those settings in here. So if you see that they're missing and you wonder why, it's because you haven't got the classic editor activated. And I want to go back to this diagram again, because the page builder is going to build the content for that page content area of the web page. How it does it? It uses blocks. Here is the Gutenberg editor, which I can show you as an example. You can add a title, and then you can add any one of these blocks to build up your page. We've got paragraphs, headings, images, lists, quotes, and there's some other blocks down here as well, some for formatting, even a table block, and more and more. Let's go back to this image, and I can show it to you in a diagrammatic way. We want to build the content for this web page. The header, sidebar, and footer are all controlled by the theme. We control this area in here for the page content. So using blocks, we would construct the web page. We might put in a title block at the top, and then probably an opening paragraph. We might want to have an image and a bullet list. Then we could possibly have a quote, and then finally a closing paragraph. And with the block system, we can easily rearrange things. If we say, well, okay, let's have the image on the right and on the left, and in fact let's put the quote up above that section there. So you can build your web pages using blocks, where each block is designed to hold a different type of content. In the next couple of videos, we're going to have a look at Gutenberg, the one that's built into WordPress, and also the one that I use and a lot of other people use called Elementor. In this video, I want to show you the basics of the Gutenberg editor and how you can build pages using blocks. As an example, we're going to take this structure where we have a title at the top, a paragraph, a quote, a bullet list, and an image side by side, and then a paragraph at the bottom. So here we are in the dashboard, and to use the Gutenberg editor, we're going to click on Add New Post. You could also get to the Gutenberg with Add New Page. The pages and posts obviously have different features, and therefore the editor is slightly different, but the block nature of it is identical. When you land on the page, you can see that you've got a big Add Title box with a flashing cursor. That's where you currently are. Down below here, these have been added by plugins I've got installed on the site, so you can ignore them, as has this button up here for Yoast SEO. Let's start off by adding a title. And once you've added the title, you can press return. What Gutenberg has done is it's actually added a block for you, and that block is going to be a paragraph block by default. You can tell it's a paragraph block. You can see where the cursor is flashing, and over on the right we can see the block options. The first thing it says is what type of block it is. So this is a paragraph block, and we have a few options down here. I'm going to type in the opening paragraph. Okay, there's my opening paragraph done. We have the block property selected. One of the things I could do if I wanted, I could put a drop cap in there, and you've also got the options to change the size of the paragraphs. I'm going to just leave it as normal. There are some color settings where you can change the background and the text color, and you can also add in your own CSS over on the right hand side here. So whenever you have a block selected, you'll see the block properties over here selected. The document tab shows you the properties for the document as a whole, and this is where you can define when you want it published. So you could publish it now, or you could schedule it into the future. You can choose categories, you can add tags, you can add a featured image, the excerpt, and also the various other options of the page. But that's not new to you. What we should look at really is the page building process, and so far we have the opening paragraph. If I then press return, you can see Gutenberg has created a new block for me, and again it's a paragraph block. Now I don't actually want a paragraph block because I want to have an image and a list side by side. And the easiest way with page builders to have two different types of blocks side by side is to insert a block called a column block. The column block will allow you to have two or more columns, and then in each of those columns you can put blocks. It might sound a little bit complicated, it's not. Let's go and add a column block. If I click on the plus, and I can see the columns there, or if you don't see it straight away, you can always search for blocks and click on columns, and there we go. We've now got a block here that has a left side and a right side. So we can add an image to the left side, and we can add a list to the right side. Let's select an image from the media library, and I'm going to use that fish, and then on this side I'm going to write my bullet points. Okay, so I have my bullet list over on the right hand side. One of the things that I don't like about Gutenberg is you need to always be aware of where your cursor is. If I press return to come out of that block, you can see Gutenberg has already created another block for me. Now I wanted to have a quote underneath this, so if I was to add the quote now, you can see the quote has actually been added in that column. The reason was it was my fault. I should have moved my cursor down below this block, this column block, and added it there. Never mind, let's add the quote. There's the quote. One of the things I told you about block editors is that you should be able to move the blocks around easily enough, and that's what we're going to do now. We're going to move this block down below the current one, which is the column block. So if you move your mouse into a block and move it over to the left hand side, you can see we've got a couple of buttons appearing. This button with the 6 dots is a handle that you can grab and drag. The little arrow, if you get a little arrow in one direction only, it means you can only move it in one direction. And as you can see, I can only move this one down. That's because there isn't any blocks above. I can only move this one up because there's no blocks below, but I want to move it down. So I'm going to grab the little handle and I'm going to pull it down until I see that solid line where I can drop it. And I've now dropped the quote underneath the column block. What I need to do now is add another block down below to add my closing paragraph. So let's add a paragraph block, and I'm going to just paste it in for speed. And there now is my page built with Page Builder. Let me just show you one thing though before we save and look at the page that we've built, because I've just added in there an empty block and it's not actually going to do anything. If I publish this page and then we go and view the post, you're not going to see that empty block. But to me, it's a little bit annoying having it there, and Gutenberg doesn't give me any immediate way to delete that. The only way that I found to delete it is to add some text into the block, and then you end up with this little menu and you can remove the block from there. So there's the page, opening paragraph, image with bullets, quote, and then the closing paragraph. Let's have a look at moving things around a little bit, because we did talk about having the quote above. And now if I move my mouse over the quote, you can see that I have options to move it up or down, and I want to move it above that column. There we go, above the columns block, and now we have that there. One thing that we have down here is it looks like we have another block, because you can see there's a big space. There we go, we've got a block written in there, and again I've got to delete that by typing something in and then click on the remove block. And in fact, it doesn't seem to want to do it. It's one of the little annoying things that I don't like about Gutenberg. It's the handling, the way that blocks get handled, and finding I have empty blocks and then I'm unable to remove them if I wanted to. But with those changes now made, let's update the page. We can go and view the post, and we see that everything has been moved around nicely. Just quickly as well, let's have a look at moving the image over to the right hand side, because a lot of the time I try this and it won't work. Let's have a look. If I select the image, I can't drag it. There is little handles here, but if I grab the handle, it's trying to move the whole column block. It's not allowing me to move just the image or just the list. So we have real problems with that. Again, it's another reason I don't like Gutenberg. Sometimes when I've done this, I've been able to move these across. I've been able to move blocks from one column to another. Now it's not allowing me to do it, and I don't know why. Perhaps it's something that I'm doing wrong, but do be aware of that Gutenberg does still have some bugs, and so don't assume that everything that doesn't work properly is your own fault. It could be Gutenberg. Let's just go back into the editor for a moment, because there's a couple of things that you should be aware of. Up here we have redo and undo. So undo is the back button, redo is the forward button. The I, if we click on it, will give you a breakdown of your page. So it's 140 words, 0 headings, 2 paragraphs and 8 blocks. And the next one is a structure, where you can edit the various properties of these blocks simply by clicking on the block in here. So if I wanted to edit the property of the image, I could click on that, and you can see that the image block properties are now open here, where I can add the alt text, change the size, and even link it to another web page. Up here on the right we have more options, so we can, for example, go into the code editor. If you need to go in and edit code HTML manually, you can go into the code editor and then switch back to the visual editor if you want to. And if we go all the way down to options, you can turn things on and off. So for example, you could enable tips, and you might also want to show custom fields. So we can save those options there. And you can see custom fields now has appeared down here. The last one maybe that I should show you is the block manager. What you can do is you can actually turn blocks off from appearing in the list. If there's some that you never use and it just takes too long looking through them all, then you can turn some off. So let's have a look. Let's take an example. Let's say we wanted to turn audio off. We could go down to Block Manager, find audio, disable it, and then it doesn't appear in the list. If we search for it, we don't find it because we've turned it off. So that also is important, because if you are looking for a block that's not there that you know should be, then just go back into your block manager and have a look to see whether it's been turned off by accident. So that's Gutenberg. That's the basics of Gutenberg. The best way to learn how to use it is to get in there and to try using it. Try rearranging blocks, try adding blocks in different ways. Just be careful that when you add a block, make sure your mouse cursor is roughly where you want to add it. Otherwise you could find that you're adding blocks in between paragraphs or not where you really intended. As I said, it takes a little bit of getting used to. It's not my favorite block editor, and given the choice between Gutenberg or the old classic editor, I'll choose the classic editor every time. However, I do like page builders, and in the next video I'll show you the page builder that I use.